All right, good evening, everyone. This is the July 8th, 2019 Westminster City Council meeting. As always, the American flag is displayed both in the front and the back of the room. If you would at this time, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Barajas, would you take the roll, please?
Atchison.
Here.
DeMott.
Here.
Haney.
Here.
Mankey. Seitz.
Here.
Scully.
Here.
Bowles.
Here. Council, you have before you the minutes of the June 24th meeting. At this time, I'd entertain a motion for the acceptance of the meetings or changes. Ms. Seitz?
Thank you. I move that the City Council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 24th, 2019 as presented.
Ms. Scully?
I second.
All those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried. Okay, folks, this is coming out of sequence, so let me bring you up to date on some things that are going on today and last couple of days. So this afternoon, about 4 o'clock, Channel 9 was carrying a news story that there would be some public hearings tonight on the Stanley Lake boating issue. We don't know where they got the program from. We don't know why they didn't look at the agenda. But there is nothing scheduled before City Council for any kind of hearing on the Stanley Lake boat issue. If there are comments to be made about it, it will be made in a normal process of public comment, just like we always do. Each person will have up to 5 minutes. Now, we also have a request that we tried to notify everybody who has had any contact with us in regards to the St. Mark's church property, the St. Charles development, that went out to anybody who testified previously or had sent in comments. Emails were sent out to everyone that the staff was requesting, along with the developer, additional time to sit and work with the community on the issues that had been raised as late as Tuesday of last week. So I'm going to pull that agenda item up. If the council makes the decision to continue that hearing, we will not have public comment on that item. It'll go to the August dates that's being recommended in the staff agenda memorandum. However, you still have the option, if you wish to stay here and talk about it, talk about that in the public comment period. However, that will not be part of the official record of your testimony. The only time your testimony is a part of the official record is if it's in the public hearing at that time, or you may submit written comments, which will be given to the Planning Commission when that comes before them. So if you're here to talk about that tonight, you still have the option, but be aware your comments will be recorded as public comments, but will not be a part of any official record because this is not a public hearing for that item. Am I confusing the heck out of all of you? Okay. Again, this was scheduled to be talked about again tonight, but as the staff has been working with the developer and members of the community, and since we had a long holiday week last week, the city was only open one day after the public hearing. There was not time to get all the answers to all the questions that were raised or the issues. So staff recommended on Wednesday evening that we proposed to move this to August date to give them time to deal with all the comments that came out of the previous testimony and the public hearing that was held by the developer. In order for them to have time to get those questions answered and get the information back to those who submitted the questions, they've asked for some additional time. The developer has agreed to the extension. It will be up to the council to vote on whether or not to give that extension tonight. If the motion is made and passes, as what staff has recommended, then this hearing will continue until August the, Mr. Tripp, what was the date, 26th? August the 26th. That point, we would look at recontinuing the hearing, trying to get answers to all the questions that have been raised by the staff, by the council members, by the general public, and allowing staff to have time to proficiently look at the questions that are raised and come up with the answers. A gentleman who testified previously, and I will put this on the record when we have the hearing, asked again, why aren't we talking to CDOT? We did. I met with them as late as 2 o'clock this afternoon. I will put this on the official record when we have the hearing, but I'm going to tell you in advance. CDOT said that they would not consider, under any circumstances, a left-hand northbound federal turn at 97th. What they would look at after a traffic analysis is done and a plan of how the layout of the project looked was submitted, they would look at, with no commitment that they're going to do anything, but if they did one at all, they would make it at the north end of the property with a three-way turn. But that's without any knowledge of how the project even lays out physically. It may not even be physically able to do it. But there is also no commitment that they would give you that. They will only look at it. But it would have an opportunity to be better considered than the one at 97. The question was raised a couple of times, the last one, why can't we talk to CDOT? I followed up on your request. I personally met with the director of CDOT and their staff last week. I met with them as late as 2 o'clock today. That's the latest update. So there will be no left-hand turn at 97th. Maybe a little bit north of that, but not at 97th. And again, depending on how this project lays out, and nobody on council has seen a layout of this project, we don't even know if it would be feasible. But I will again put that information on the record when we come back together at the next hearing. All right, does everybody understand what we're doing with the St. Charles and St. Mark's property item? Okay. All right, council, I'm going to ask you to pull item 11A up from old business and passage of ordinances on second reading and ask for a motion for a recommendation based upon the staff comments for a continuation of this hearing until a date certain of August 26th. This time I'll open the motion. Ms. Scully. Yeah, but you need to go to the one that's in. Yeah. All right, go ahead. Nancy.
Sorry. I move to, continue item 11A until August 26th at 7 p.m.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Scully?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by council? Mr. Dumont?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During your explanation to the crowd, you had said if they submit written comments, that it would go back to the Planning Commission? Would it go back to them before it comes to us, or did you
It
mean
would
to
still
us?
come back to us, but it would also become part of the record if it goes to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Again, if you put written records, those automatically come to the file and they become part of the permanent record. Comments here are just in public comment. That's what will not become part of the record.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council?
I have a.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I can see that there's a lot of folks here tonight, and I maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that some of you are here for this item. And so I want to make sure, I think the mayor did a great job explaining it, but I want to make sure that you understand we're continuing this because we really want to be thoughtful and responsive to the questions that were raised by the community. And some of those questions are more fully vetted through both the ODP and PDP process. And so by putting these closer together, it gives us an opportunity to really address those. And typically, those are discrete processes, but because this comprehensive plan change is tied to the PDP, they're connected, it's appropriate for us to do this, and it really does allow us to give a full answer and understand the true impacts of the development. That does not forfeit your right tonight to make public comments during the 5 minutes everybody gets to make public comments. But the mayor wanted to let you know it will not be part of that public record that's part of the public hearing. Okay, so that is the difference. So I guess I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that this is the city really wanting to work with the community, work with the developer to fully vet this project. And thank you for your questions, the previous meeting.
All right, there are other council comments? In order to make sure that we get a record of this, I'm going to ask you to use your lights to vote. The motion is to continue this to August the 26th. Okay. And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. So this item is continued until August the 26th. All right, the next item on the agenda, moving on is the, and then the sites will do the presentation. While Ms. Seitz is doing that, I do have like 4 sheets of sign-ups, so if that's what you signed up for and you want to still do that on public comment, you're more than welcome. So just hang back and we'll go through the names here shortly.
Can I get members of the Inclusivity Board to come join me up here? I think we say this a lot, but we can't say it too much. One of the things that makes Westminster a wonderful community, I'd say our #1 asset, are our residents. And in Westminster, we have a goal to make sure that we are an inclusive community, that everyone feels valued and heard and welcome. These are all members of our Inclusivity Board that work hard to represent our city so that we can do the best job possible in that aim. And I'd love it if you guys could introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Miguel Mendoza Hall, junior member of the Inclusivity Board, meaning that I've just joined, but really happy to be part of it.
Michelle Zajic. Yoshin Parjadi, been on the Inclusivity Board for a couple of years. Yeah, when I go newly appointed.
Well, thank you guys for coming. This year, the Inclusivity Board asked Westminster City Council, and we were happy to assist with us, to do a proclamation for Juneteenth. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background if you haven't heard about Juneteenth. Dating back to 1865, on June 19th, the Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. For most of us, we remember the Emancipation Proclamation. This was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which was official January 1st, 1963. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and oversee the resistance. The celebration of June 19th was coined Juneteenth and became a time for reassurance, praying, and gathering, remaining family together. The celebration became highly revered in Texas decades later, with many descendants making an annual pilgrimage back to Galveston. Today, Juneteenth is celebrated across the country with festivals and many forms of community celebration. Recognizing Juneteenth supports the city's strategic plan of a vibrant, inclusive, and engaged community as it promotes knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture. And I did a little bit of research and wanted to tell you, kind of learned a little history that I thought was interesting. In the 1870s, a group of former slaves pooled $800 together and through local churches to purchase 10 acres of land and create an Emancipation Park to host future Juneteenth celebrations. That's in modern day Houston. So Emancipation Day in Texas became a legal state holiday in recognition of Juneteenth. So 151 years later, I think it's still important to recognize this day, and I appreciate the Inclusivity Board bringing it forward. So with no further ado, I will read the proclamation. Whereas Juneteenth is honored in the month of June and every month, and whereas Juneteenth commemorates the ending of slavery in Texas over 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and whereas in July 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed, making Black people legal citizens of the United States, and whereas the day's name is a combination of June and 19th in honor of the date of the announcement, and whereas Juneteenth is also known as African American Freedom Day or Emancipation Day, whereas the speech of Frederick Douglass still resonates with many seeking equality and justice, and whereas the City of Westminster stands with all who stand for justice and humanity, and whereas the City of Westminster condemns all acts of othering in the shape of overt acts or microaggressions,
And now, therefore, I, Herb Atchison, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the entire council and city staff, do hereby celebrate June 19th, 2019 as Juneteenth in the City of Westminster, and I call upon the people of Westminster to join together in honoring the resilience and contributions of African Americans in our community and across the country. Thank you guys so much for bringing this forward. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the next part where we move on to citizen communication. So those of you who haven't been here or you've been here before, let me remind you kind of the guidelines. Each person can come to the podium up here at the front. You're allowed to up to 5 minutes to speak on anything that you wish to desire. A couple things that we tell you about the rules of the use of the podium. It does move up and down if you're uncomfortable with the height of it, so you can do that. We do not allow any kind of placards, any kind of electronic uses of anything to help broadcast your speech. You may talk up to 5 minutes, at which time you start, the green light will come on. When you have 1 minute left, the yellow light will come on, and when your time is up, the red light will come on. For those of you in the audience, this is all recorded, so we ask you please to be polite to those up at the microphone and not interrupt them. Now, I've gone through the list. I have about 4 pages of sign up. Some of you signed up on more than one sheet, so I've gone through and removed at least one of those so that you're only signed up once. Each person may have up to 5 minutes. You may not give your time to someone else. So when I call your name, if you're prepared to come forward, please do. If you decide you want to wait, just let me know that you're going to defer your testimony to a later date, and I'll just cross you off, but we still keep a record of everybody who signed up. So, Mr. Fittis, you're up first, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I don't have any pre-prepared remarks, but I want to share some thoughts and some facts and a little anecdote, and hopefully I'll connect the dots by the end of this. First, I want to respond to a statement that Catherine Scully, Councilor Scully, made a couple of meetings ago. And she said that leadership comes from love. And that statement has sort of stuck with me because I don't think any of you sitting up here, including Don Tripp and any of the staff, would be sitting here, would be elected, re-elected, or appointed if you didn't have love for the city of Westminster. So I thank you for that and your service. A couple of facts. In 1980, the population of the city of Westminster was roughly just over 50,000. 20 years later, it had doubled to 100,000. That's the same time period that I happened to move to Westminster. From 2000 to 2019, it's only increased by about 14,000, 15,000 to the best of my knowledge based on information on the web. Last week, I had the distinct pleasure of going to New York for a leadership/educational meeting. It included some high-profile speakers, including former Chief of Staff John Kelly, which made it quite interesting. During that time, we were able to do a little sightseeing, and I came across this pamphlet that I'd like to read to you. What is density? Does the word describe a condition of people or place? Is it people crowded together? buildings too tightly spaced or too tall? Or is it a lack of open space or on ground level? Arguments about density have shaped and reshaped New York City. Critics of tenement life and housing reformers viewed open space and sunlight as the antidote for overcrowding and created a new vision of master-planned, high-rise residential neighborhoods. The Depression brought government funding into the business of housing, and by the 50s, Tower in the Park became the standard approach to slum clearance and urban renewal. Yet this formula for working and middle-class projects, which were designed at extremely low density, housed far fewer residents than the tenement blocks they replaced. By the 1960s, critics led by Jane Jacobs and others denounced the modernist solutions in favor of traditional neighborhoods. Density today remains hypercharged concept, a negative to many who equate it with crowding, or a positive for those who claim it creates more vibrant and affordable neighborhoods. Whatever one believes about its relative merits, a better understanding of density is a first step to meaningful dialogue about the future of the city. Not only does this apply to New York City, I think it applicably applies to the city of Westminster. I think density is a key element that needs to be discussed. And when we're looking at developments including St. Charles, St. Mark's, now the Pillar of Fire and the new downtown, it's even more critical. I would ask you to really consider and listen to what the people that are here tonight have to say. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Benson.
Why did you start the timer? I haven't even started talking.
Time is on, Ms. Benson.
I hadn't started talking and that timer was running. Herb, are we really going to start this tonight? I mean, really? Is this how we're going to do this? You know, it's pretty simple. You respect me, I respect you. You don't respect me, I don't respect you. I'll stand up here and rip on you for 5 minutes straight. Is that what you want? You don't mind, huh? You don't mind, do you? That's good. We're making eye contact. I love it. That's awesome. Oh, yeah, bummer. Went right back down, huh? So you're going to jip me out of my time, right? So you don't want to hear what I have to say tonight, do you, Herb? Well, anyway, members of City Council, thank you for your respectful ears and eyes, because I know that you know what's going on. And I want to thank you very much for not letting Herb here diminish public comment and letting the community speak. I hope you have to sit here till midnight, Herb. Be real honest with you. What a bummer. Let's talk about Timmy Henley. You remember Timmy Henley? Westminster police officers, Louis Engelberg, Chris Hempelman, shot him to death because he had a cell phone in his hand. Murdered him. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Westminster. I haven't been here much lately, you know. Herb, I wore this shirt for you tonight. What do you think of it? Thought criminal. You like it, don't you? All these thoughts going through my mind, in your ear, in one ear and out the other, just makes me a damn criminal, doesn't it? You wish that you could do anything you could to have these cops remove me from this meeting, don't you? Don't worry about what's going on in this meeting, because you're going to need to worry about what's going on out in the community, because we're going to tell the truth. You see these? Now, I'm not going to use this to, be a visual aid or anything, but can I read it to you before you have the cops haul me out of here? Shot 11 times by Westminster police officers, Louis Engelberg and Chris Hempelman. Why? Because he had a cell phone in his hand. Results? Officers exonerated by the DA of any wrongdoing. Why don't Westminster police officers have body-worn cameras? If anybody wants to learn more, you can go to YouTube, Murder in Westminster, Colorado, Timmy Henley. These are going all over the city, I want you to know. I just had a great conversation with a group of people just over at a gas station, 5 of them. 5 people stood there. They said, it's unbelievable. We know it's happening. We don't know what to do. We're afraid. Nobody listens. Do you know that in your city, you operate on $330 million a year for 113,000 people? You know this, right? You approve this budget. And nowhere in there did anybody think to ask why we don't have more transparency for the price of almost $3,000 per resident in this city of Westminster? $3,000. Are these citizens in Westminster getting $3,000 worth of city services? Timmy Henley didn't, did he? He wasn't here but 6 weeks. And he was dead in Westminster. That's what your city is known for, Herb. It's no family environment. You know, I'm a longtime resident of Jefferson County. Spend a lot of time in Denver. Your neighbors over in Denver do it better than you do. They have more transparency. No problems with the Department of Public Safety over there getting records. Johnny on the spot every time I ask. Here, it's like pulling teeth. Because everybody thinks they're elite and that they don't answer to the people. Every one of you are elected by the people, including you, Herb. You don't work for the city. You work for the people. You know that, right? And here I am in my shirt and shoes. You have to respect that for civility, right? Because it sounded like it's not going to stay civil for very long. I don't have anything to do with that. I want you to make change. I want you to put body cams on these cops. Do it for the family. There's lots of nuances to body cams. We know that. Why do you guys want to do everything in the dark? Why can't you look at that budget with honesty and go, for this price, I think we can be a little more transparent. Oh, and by the way, let me tell you real quick, my son, he moved to Westminster. He was out of here within a year. He lived here with his family and his kid, and he couldn't even take his kid to the golf course. They gave him hell for wanting to teach his kid how to play golf at the damn golf course.
Charlie Smith.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Smith. I'm Land Use Counsel for St. Charlestown Company relative to their development of the St. Mark's Village community. I'll shorten this up a little bit since we're not having the public hearing tonight, which we appreciate the continuance to allow a little more time to work with staff in the city to improve this project. St. Charlestown Company applied for an amendment to the comp plan. It proposed changes to the land use designations, as you all know, changing the property from mixed use to R36, another portion of the property, another parcel from mixed use to retail commercial. These were really required more as a technicality than a substantive change. The mixed use designation requires a vertical mix of uses, meaning that you'd have to have something like ground floor retail in order for the mixed use designation to work. The city will still get the mix of uses that it envisions now. There'll just be a horizontal mix of uses. You'll have residential uses on some parcels and retail commercial uses on the other. It does not allow for new residential where residential couldn't be built before. It doesn't change the density of what could be built. It doesn't allow for different types of uses or put more of a burden on traffic or schools. It's important to reflect on this because really not a lot is changing from the status quo. If there are concerns about traffic or density or seats in schools, they would all exist now. They're certainly not being created by this change to the comp plan. Put it another way, it won't change a whole lot substantively in terms of what could be built, except that it would allow for development of an affordable housing community in this city, which is something that the city has expressed a desire to have. It's worth noting that St. Charlestown has submitted an application for a PDP and an ODP, as was mentioned earlier, and council will have an opportunity to review those as part of the entitlement process. There'll be a public hearing, and issues like traffic or crime or seats in schools or the design of the building, density, things like that can be addressed during that process. Comp plan amendments, however, have specific criteria for approval in the code in section 11.521. And therefore, the focus of council, we would encourage council to focus on those criteria when evaluating the comp plan. There's 10 criteria, and we don't need to go through all those. We have limited time, and there's already been considerable evidence submitted demonstrating that this comp plan application, this amendment, complies with those criteria for approval. They were in St. Charles Town's initial application, where they went through each of the criteria, provided an analysis of how the application satisfies the criteria in the code. The city's comments provided further analysis of that, including separate comments from the Department of Economic Development, and the Planning Commission, in a unanimous approval of the comp plan amendment application, determined that the application satisfies those comments as criteria as well. Therefore, we encourage council to focus on this set of criteria when making its decision. Now, understandably, council, you're hearing a lot of comments about traffic and other issues, and you feel compelled to address those issues. It's part of your job. It's what you're here for as elected officials. And it's up to you on how you would like to address those things. You have a lot of tools at your disposal on how to do that. But the criteria in the code for approval of a comp plan amendment doesn't really discuss a lot of those issues. They're more appropriate for the PDP or ODP stage, or to address just in general city planning. Multiple residents mentioned that while they're supportive of affordable housing somewhere in Westminster, they would not like affordable housing in their neighborhood. They expressed concerns related to crime or decreased home values, and St. Charles Town has submitted a letter to the city addressing a lot of those, with fact-based studies discussed in the letter that actually indicate that home values will increase as affordable housing is added to neighborhoods. That crime, it has been demonstrated that crime will not increase when affordable housing is added to a neighborhood. And as we're running out of time here, I would like to point council to look at two things. The first criteria for approval of a comp plan is, does it comply, comp plan amendment rather, is does it comply with the policies and the intent in the comp plan itself and other adopted city policies. One of those adopted city policies was adopted just last year, and it's the Affordable and Workforce Housing Strategic Plan. And it begins by saying, every Westminster resident should have a safe, stable, and affordable place to live. Westminster residents are not a commodity, they are a community. We encourage you to consider that when reviewing this in a few weeks, and we will see you then.
Mr. Smith,
Thank
that's
you.
your time. Jordan Zielinski.
Good evening, Council. Thank you again for hearing more deliberation about St. Mark Village. My name is Jordan Zielinski with St. Charles Town Company, and I would like to summarize the contents of a letter that I sent to Council. I'm not sure if any of you had a chance to read that. An open letter. I won't read it word for word, but I would like to address the 5 prevalent concerns that we heard from residents. St. Charles, at its core, is a community development organization. Not by definition, but the projects that we do, we work with the communities on solutions. Some of the comments, some of the feedback we have heard is intended to shut down any development of this parcel. We feel that is unacceptable. We have a stellar track record of engaging community and coming up with viable solutions. We stand willing and ready to be a part of the traffic solution. We've heard about traffic concerns. We can be a part of that solution, I think, with the city, potentially both financially and functionally. In terms of driving support with CDOT, with RTD, on a number of levels. We've done it before. In the past, we've both installed hawk signals, which are pedestrian traffic crossings, and we've helped reinstate bus lines. So we have a track record of doing it. We know how to do it. We know how to engage with communities to get it done. The 5 prevalent concerns that we've heard about: density, traffic, crime, schools, and concern about home values and property taxes. Just to start, the proposed density not being appropriate for this site, it's an interesting comment. The city presumably spent an incredible amount of time, of resource, of engagement on the prior comprehensive plan from 2013. I don't think, and I don't think that any of you think, that decision for a mixed-use designation with the density that was proposed at the site was by accident. I don't know if many of the parcels in the comprehensive plan get zoned by accident, but I suspect this one was not either. I would argue that the density is appropriate. It's a state highway, as Heath Klein mentioned, 42,000 cars per day. It's not a residential neighborhood on Federal Boulevard. Rena McConnell mentioned a transition of uses. This is exactly that. This condition exists all throughout your city. I identified 12 different areas of the city where a mix of uses, from high-density residential multifamily rental to ownership townhome to single-family homes, and many different things in between. Continuum of care for senior age-restricted housing. They coexist currently in at least 12 different areas of the city. So to think that the density is not appropriate in this site that has great arterial and local road access is preposterous. The density is appropriate. We're not proposing to increase the density. We're proposing to decrease the density. We are a little surprised by the neighborhood feedback that a decrease in density is a bad thing. Number 2, traffic issues. These are existing issues. St. Mark Village and the contemplated development has added nothing to these existing issues. As I've stated, we would relish the opportunity to engage the community and be a part of the solution. We've offered to help in part install a traffic triangle, a right-in, right-out triangle only. And that's not an end-all, that's not a solve-all issue, but it helps. It's one of the steps that we can take. The Green Court, we would welcome the possibility to discuss our role and the potential improvement of Green Court. Regarding CDOT, and your meeting this afternoon with CDOT, having worked on CDOT state highways before, we know them well. They're an immovable object. Similar to RTD, the only way to get them to move is with resident engagement. People showing up at meetings just like this and bickering at them to make a change. It's the only way it happens. We would be more than happy to help lead that effort. Crime. Crime is often cited for specific to affordable housing developments. It's simply not true. I would encourage you to read the plethora of research that is readily available to you. I sent you one of the studies. There are dozens more. Similar to property taxes, it's just not true that affordable housing complexes decrease home values and as a result, property taxes. In fact, in Denver was one of 20 metro areas where property taxes actually increased in areas where affordable housing was built. Last but not least, schools. As you heard from Mr. Gurman, the schools have been depopulating for over a decade. Many of our schools in the metro area are closing because they don't have children, because families cannot afford to live where schools are located. St. Mark, you'll hear from a number of people coming up. We have overwhelming public support. I would encourage you to look at the list of names who have signed on in support of the community. And would you like these documents or not at this time?
Leave those with the city clerk, please. Margaret Hammond. Okay, Ms. Hammond. Just a minute, we'll have somebody lower that for you, ma'am.
Yeah, I got it. Is that right?
Well, they'll lower the podium, it won't be so much a straight.
Oh, I think you can hear me, can't you? Yeah, we're good enough.
Trying to make it more comfortable for you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm not going to talk for 5 minutes. I'm just going to say that I have my major concern about the St. Mark Village is the number of acres that make the density so high, and that on some levels, the location of this development is going to be a desert for health services. There are no, those families are going to need medical help, and they can't, if they're walking, if they don't have transportation, where are they going to go? I believe they're going to be calling 911. That's added burden on our services. So that's essentially my concern is if you have 500 people on 6 acres and they don't have any way to go other than walking to get to parks to recreation to swimming pools to stuff like that. And it's in the summertime, and we have those youngsters there who like to have something to do. How is the development going to take that into consideration? So I guess basically that's my two concerns. One is the density, and the second is access to services based on the fact that there's, busing is limited. And, I'm not very good at thinking about this beyond that. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Carmen Alino?
No, I'll let Jeff sit upwards.
Oh, sorry, they'll bring it
No,
back
no,
up
no,
for you.
that's totally fine. Thank you. Oh, it's automatic. It's a fancy one. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Carmen Atilano. I'm the Manager of Neighborhood Relations for Urban Land Conservancy, or ULC. ULC is a nonprofit whose mission is to preserve real estate for community benefit, including affordable housing for a wide range of working households. ULC completed its first land acquisition in Westminster in December of last year, on which it plans to create permanently affordable townhouses. So other needs addressed in ULC's work include transportation, health, education, and jobs. So ULC enjoys a good relationship with the City of Westminster and the Westminster Economic Development Authority. So together, we are working to provide housing at various levels of affordability here in Westminster. But something we have observed in the work that we do is that people who get priced out of a hot real estate market might not be who you think first that they would be. For example, one of the most frequently priced out sectors is young people who grew up in the community that they are trying to start their own households. Like their parents, they aspire to have a place where they can live, work, and contribute to a strong community. And strong communities, if they are to remain that way, make room for younger generations. So it's just an observation that we have seen. So while the St. Charles Town Community Project is not part of Urban Land Conservancy's work, it shares our goal, a goal of Westminster as well, of creating more affordable housing. It will help fill a void and contribute to the health of the community in two compelling ways that I would like to mention now. The first is affordable housing. It enables many people to live in close proximity of their work site, reducing commuter traffic. That means that those of you who manage or own businesses will find it easier to retain the workforce that you need. Second, it results in neighbors with roots who have long-term reasons to care about their community, including the condition of their parks, the quality of their schools, and the day-to-day interactions with their neighbors. So for those reasons and many, many others you'll hear tonight, I'd like to encourage all of you to support affordable housing in Westminster. Affordability amounts to nothing less than opportunity. If any of you would like more detail about the work that Urban Land Conservancy does or anything that I've just said, I'll leave my business card with city staff as for your reference. Thank you.
The last name is Hernandez, and I'm sorry I couldn't read the first name. Is there someone the last name of Hernandez? I can't read the first name, I'm sorry. That's fine, go ahead.
Buenas
You're not
tardes.
the person on the list, would you tell us who you are?
Es mi intérprete.
I'm her interpreter.
Ya. Buenas tardes, Ayuntamiento. Mi nombre es Nancy Rodríguez. Okay. Y soy miembro comunitario de Westminster. Me gustaría expresar mis pensamientos sobre el desarrollo de vivienda accesible de Street Mark y también compartir mis experiencias.
Good afternoon, Town Hall. My name is Nancy Rodriguez, and I am a resident here at Federal Heights. I would like to express my thoughts on the development of affordable housing in St. Mark and also share my experiences.
He participado en algunas organizaciones, vivo en esta área porque el alquiler es barato y es el único lugar donde yo puedo quedarme.
I live in this area because it is accessible and cheap, and the only reason why we're here is because we can afford a 2-bedroom apartment.
Aunque vivimos en un apartamento de 2 habitaciones y tengo 4 hijos y mi esposo, tratamos de hacer lo mejor posible.
And although we do live in a 2-bedroom two-bedroom apartment with my 4 kids and my husband, we try to make the most out of it.
Sin embargo, hemos experimentado que no siempre recibimos los mejores servicios en nuestro complejo de apartamentos.
However, we have experienced that we do not always receive the best services in our apartment complex, and we have to pay out of pocket for things that we should not be paying for.
Tenemos que pagar de nuestro bolsillo las cosas por las que no deberíamos pagar. Como por ejemplo, obtener un plomero para que arregle nuestros inodoros.
Things that we shouldn't be paying for, like basically just fixing our toilet. We have to pay out of pocket for those.
Hacemos todo lo posible para asegurarnos de que se satisfagan las necesidades de nuestros hijos, incluyendo si se trata de un gasto que está fuera de nuestro presupuesto.
We do everything possible to ensure that the needs of our children are met, even if it is at an expense that is out of our budget.
Creo que cada inquilino debe tener un gran servicio y lo más importante, dignidad.
I believe that each tenant must have great service and, most importantly, dignity.
Creo que el complejo de apartamentos de Street Mark podría ayudar a aliviar algunos de estos problemas.
I think that St. Mark apartment complex could help alleviate some of these problems.
Sí. Y creo que trabajar juntos podría salvar la brecha de la comunicación.
And I think, and I believe that working together could bridge the communication gap.
También me gustaría agregar que soy una mujer de fe cristiana que veo a mí misma como una líder comunitaria.
I would also like to add that I'm not only a woman of Christian faith, but that I see myself as a leader within my community.
Y he aprendido la importancia de lo que significa ser un líder y ser la voz de la comunidad cuando están en lo oculto, en las sombras.
I have learned the importance of what it means to be a leader and to be the voice of the community when those who are hidden in the shadows and their voices are not heard.
Me gustaría que el ayuntamiento de la ciudad tuviera comprensión por aquellos que no cuentan con los recursos necesarios para, al final del día, solo estamos tratando de sobrevivir.
I would like the City Council to have compassion for those who do not have the necessary resources because at the end of the day, we are just trying to survive.
Otra cosa que he escuchado es en la comunidad que cree que el crimen aumentaría y creo que es un signo de discriminación.
Another thing I have heard that the community believes that crime will increase, and I think it is a sign of discrimination.
No todos somos delincuentes.
We are not all criminals.
Estamos en su mayor parte haciendo lo mejor para nuestras familias.
We are here for the most part doing the best for our families.
Nosotros somos la comunidad. Hemos hecho muchas cosas sin paga para abogar por nuestros mismos por nosotros mismos y lo hacemos simplemente por amor.
We as the community have done many things without paying to advocate for ourselves, and we do it simply out of love.
Hemos abogado por la educación y entre otros temas importantes.
And we have advocated for education among other important issues with the help of nonprofit organizations.
Con la ayuda de organizaciones sin fines de lucro.
Yes, I'm sorry, but that's the end of your time.
Okay,
Thank you
that's
for
fine.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez? Okay. Mr. Venegas? Ruthio, did you sign up? Okay. Mr. Tallarico?
Mayor, Council, thank you for the time to speak tonight. I am in favor of this development. And I felt like maybe we have to talk about a little bit of history for a couple of minutes, if you'll just You know, I was born and raised in Adams County. And I moved here in 1965, 92nd and Sheridan, 92nd and Raleigh Street, as a matter of fact. 92nd was a single lane, for some of you who may remember. Lowell Boulevard didn't go through, it stopped at 97th. 36, Highway 36 today, Boulder Turnpike, then 25-cent toll road. The only road over 36 was 80th Avenue. There was no bridge, no extensions on 104th Avenue, nothing taking us to the west side. Why? What supported it was growth. And Westminster's planning and council like you made difficult choices. This caused existing residents fear because of change. This project that we're talking about today, it's a need. It's a need. It's a startup family need. It's a workforce need. You know that. Employment. This particular development is under a very strict set of criteria. And that criteria has to be revisited every year. Some issues that we have talked about and heard about at different meetings and so forth have been resolved. When people hear and understand and intentions are made clear, decisions are clear. However, one thing that I'm really upset about, I've been here a long time, I don't like fear. I don't like planting fear in people's minds. That's just not right. It's not acceptable. Financial need is not a criteria for comments like those people. Let's remember, need does not make one a thief or unable. This city was built by first starters. Let's remember that. Okay? This was a farming community as it grew. There were many difficult positions having to be taken. In this room, I was there. Please help satisfy the need for this workforce housing. It's a responsibility. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Greenwald?
Mr. Mayor,
City Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I've thought long and hard about how to address my position on the St. Mark project and how to speak from my heart without getting emotional, so I'll try not to. But I'm going to start with a story, and hopefully I won't bore you, and I'll be done in my 5 minutes, I promise. The story is about who am I. I'm a Colorado native. I was born here. My parents moved to Shaw Heights. Yeah, that's part of Westminster, for those of you that remember. When I was 6, I married my Westminster High School sweetheart. We just celebrated our 44th anniversary last Friday, so I've been here a while. My father was also a Colorado native, born in 1922, was raised in Globeville, and if you know anything about the history of Denver, Globeville was a rough part of town known for its crime, for its bad neighborhoods full of Italians and Germans and Polacks, as he used to say. My father had to leave school after the 5th grade to help support his family. Back then it was the Great Depression. His father lost his job. They couldn't afford to live, so my dad quit school and went to work in a CCC camp. If you don't know what that was, it was a government-supported program where they took young men, put them to work in physical labor. They sent the money home to support their families. He was working on the job. He actually worked on Trail Ridge Road, which was built with CCC camp money. And if you don't know, part of the old Westminster High School was built with money from the CCC camp. After the camp, he was fortunate enough to get a job working for a local company at the time and then joined the Navy when World War II broke out. When he got out of the Navy, was lucky enough to still be alive, came home, was hired back with the company that he had worked for before, which was a requirement by the government back then. He worked for that same company for 38 years with a 6th grade education. My mother is also a Colorado native, was born in 1925 in Fort Morgan. She was a child of immigrant parents that were now referred to as Germans from Russia. She was the youngest of 6. Her mother died when she was 7 years old of leukemia. After her father became a U.S. citizen, they worked as a farmer and worked there as a farm laborer his entire life. My mother grew up working on the farm with her sisters and brothers. She buried my father when he was home on leave before the war was over, and they resettled in Denver after that. My mom and dad both worked their entire lives, both to support our modest house in Westminster, and we're proud. I think one of their proudest things was that my brother and I were the 2 first in our family to ever go to college. So they saved their money, sent us to college. My father died in 1972 at 70 years old, and my mother, who will be 94 in October, still lives in Westminster. In fact, she lives in the independent living housing at 112th and Federal. Even with my dad working 38 years in his pension and my mom's Social Security, she could not afford to live in that apartment if it wasn't for my brother and I's support. So the need for affordable housing is pretty prevalent. That there's a woman who worked her entire life, and my father worked to give her a place to live, couldn't afford to live in Westminster if she had to pay for it herself. I'm trying to make sure I don't run over on time, but I've thought about this a lot. And how lucky I am and how lucky my brother and I were to have parents that cared about us so much and gave us an opportunity to make a go of it in our lives. And how many times they needed help and looked for relatives or friends that may have been able to help them. I couldn't decide how I was going to talk about this, and I talked to my mother today, as a matter of fact, and she said that if I didn't come and speak in favor of it, that she'd be ashamed of me. So I'm here to make her not ashamed. So I think this is something that we need. I ask the council to please make this project a priority, and let's not be deterred by unwarranted prejudice, fear, and ignorance. She reminded me that the people that we say we don't want those people in our neighborhood, she shook her finger at me and said, "You are those people. Don't make those people go somewhere else." Thank you for hearing me.
Sample.
Thank you for having me up tonight. My name is Brian Sample, and I'm here in support of St. Mark's Village. Briefly, I would like to discuss my background and why I'm in here in support of the project and the City of Westminster. I've been an affordable housing practitioner for the past 9 years. I currently serve on the Board of Housing Colorado, which is an advocacy and networking member organization that serves all of Colorado. Housing Colorado is dedicated to the promotion and preservation of affordable housing in Colorado. Additionally, in 2017, I was asked to be part of the City of Westminster's Housing Task Force. The Housing Task Force met numerous times to understand the need for affordable housing in Westminster and make specific recommendations to the council, which I will discuss later. Lastly, I'm lucky to be a City of Westminster resident. First, through my work with Housing Colorado, I have seen the affordable housing crisis in Colorado, and specifically Westminster, continue to get worse and worse. A 2016 study by the National Housing Conference details that our school teachers, nurses, law enforcement officers cannot afford to buy a home in the Denver metro area. This same study in 2019 details that even less occupations such as firefighters, child worker, care workers, plumbers, and bank tellers are unable to buy homes. Affordable housing projects such as St. Mark's are paramount to keep our workforce living and thriving in Westminster. As part of the work with the City of Westminster Housing Task Force, I was personally exposed to the drastic need for affordable housing in Westminster. 3,500 Westminster residents need rental assistance to afford their rent payments without being cost burdened, and more than 4,000 renters are on wait lists for subsidized housing. These renters are hoping to access the meager 800 rent-restricted rentals in the city that currently exist but are already occupied. The Housing Task Force produced the City of Westminster's Affordable and Workforce Housing Strategic Plan. The core value statement in the recent report clearly states Westminster's dedication to housing in our community. As a Westminster resident, I am proud that we are making a commitment to make sure safe, sustainable, and affordable housing is available to all of our community members. The strategic plan details that investment in housing will improve Westminster's sustainability, economic viability, desirability, and attract additional investment. The strategic plan number 2 recommendation is to remove regulatory or process barriers to incentivize desired housing developments. A common theme of the Housing Task Force was the intent to attract development rather than push it away. One way of attracting development is to remove regulatory or process barriers if they exist. The report states that while financial subsidies and thoughtful public-private investments are often needed to meet affordable housing demands, it is also important to review basic governmental regulations to ensure they are not discouraging needed forms of housing. Specifically, it is important to review zoning regulations to identify any existing barriers to the production of affordable housing. This does not mean compromising on regulations or codes. It means taking common sense approach to reviewing existing regulations and adapting where they're needed. In conclusion, I recommend that the council consider updating the current zoning from the mixed use designation to the R36 designation that actually both do allow for 36 units per acre. This project will provide a small dent in the massive affordable housing issue in Westminster by providing an additional 216 of well-built, safe, decent, affordable housing for fellow community members. Thank you.
Father Kaler?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. It was our property that we sold to the St. Charles Town Project that's taken on our name, and we've done that gladly. But before that transaction happened, I'm subject to several consulting boards, so I can't just make the decision on my own. But after careful thought, dialogue with the St. Charles Company and so forth, it became clear to us this would be a good neighbor for us, and it will be our immediate neighbor. I mean, it's the entrance that comes to our property that we're talking about. So, the reason we support it is because it will help young families to get started who are having a difficult time to pay high rentals in other areas. They would be able to start with an affordable rent, that they can now live there in good standards and so on. So we really support this whole project. I avail myself to all of you in trying to make this a workable project and hope that it goes. And in fact, I'm soon to retire. In fact, I told them, hurry and get this done so I can retire and live there. All right. Thank you.
Ron Maley?
Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Ron Mell. I'm a resident of Westminster. I also specialize in affordable housing. I'm also someone who's once lived in affordable housing, so I know exactly the type of development that Charlestown Companies is proposing, and it's a way for people to move up in life and get a step up. The things you heard from other people tonight about entry-level people moving into their careers is exactly the truth. Those are the people that live in my developments. They're first-year school teachers, they're dental hygienists, they're people who are just getting started in life, and this type of housing is extremely important. We have a housing crisis nationally, but it's particularly acute here in Colorado, where our cost of living is so high. Evidence of this is all the affordable developments that I have built in Colorado have been 100% leased before we even get our temporary CO. The need is so great here that I just don't see how people could be opposed to this. In addition, we've done studies of home values, in particular in Douglas County, where we're doing an affordable housing project down there. We looked at all the affordable housing projects and the single-family homes that surrounded them. All those home values, from the time that those affordable housing developments were built, went up in value at the exact same pace as single-family homes that did not have affordable housing nearby them. And I'm more than happy to share those results with city staff. These new construction deals, similar to what St. Charles Company is proposing, are comparable to market rate developments. You'd never know that they're affordable housing. They compete with high-end market rate developments when you look at what the common areas are. Please consider these facts when you're looking at this. It's so needed here in Colorado, and as a resident of Westminster, I think it's really important that we approve this. So I'd encourage you to consider these needs when you make your decision. Thank you for hearing me tonight.
Charlie Wilkie?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Charlie Woolley. I'm the founder of the St. Charles Town Company. You've heard from some supporters tonight, which I thought was very important for you to hear, that affordable housing is a very important thing in Westminster. Relative to our company, we have done these kinds of developments all over the city, and we work very hard, and usually in areas of change, which Westminster is an area of change. We've won numerous awards for our projects because we work with the communities, and we are ready to roll up our sleeves and go to the next stage. This, as you heard tonight from Charlie Smith, was to be a sort of a technical first stage, getting the amendment to the comprehensive plan done. And you've heard from Jordan tonight that we can address, we believe, the concerns of the citizens who have spoken out with their concerns about the project. You've heard our neighbors, Urban Land Conservancy to the south of us, who are ready to work with us on solutions for our project. And we, in fact, did a roadway solution with ULC in one of our other projects in Denver. So we worked with them before and come up with transportation solutions to issues on difficult site plans, which we had in Denver. You've heard some people dreaming about having an affordable apartment in one of our communities. And you've heard from two longtime residents of Westminster who have been civic leaders for years, Joe Tallarico and John Greenwald. You've heard from a highly informed affordable housing banker and a highly informed affordable housing developer about what affordable housing is really all about, in particular workforce housing, which is what we're proposing to build at St. Mark Village. We've been on a 2-year journey for this project, and we're getting I think, closer to the end and to the finish line. The most important thing that I think we have to do from here to the next hearing is to do the community outreach, make sure that we touch as many people and address as many concerns as we can, and we're prepared to do that. And we just hope you'll give us favorable consideration in moving this very important project forward. Thank you.
Dick Johnston. Matthew Burnick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. My name is Matthew Burnick. I live in North Park East. I've been a Westminster resident for 15 years. I want to say something before I start that I really resent some of the terminology used by some of the people speaking in favor of the St. Charles Town, from the St. Charles Town Company and their supporters for the St. Mark's development. I am not here to spread fear. I'm not ignorant. I am a resident of Westminster. I've lived here, as I said, for 15 years. I'm also a community leader. I've served on the HOA board in my previous community I lived in, and I serve on the HOA board now. I've served for a total of 8 years, okay? Unlike the people speaking from the St. Charles Town Company, okay, which I double checked on Google here just to be sure, it's not a nonprofit corporation, okay? This St. Mark's development is about money. M-O-N-E-Y. And in particular, my money and all of your money, okay? Because this isn't being built with charitable contributions from the world's largest non-governmental entity, the Catholic Church, okay? The church isn't funding this thing, okay? This is to make money for the St. Charles Town Company. That's number one, okay? Number two, the St. Charles Town Company has made a number of representations, not only here in front of council during the last meeting, but also to people who have contacted them from my community that are absolutely false and misleading, okay? Number one, in the last city council meeting, they talked about 400 residents living in this. So I did a little math. I was thinking, God, that doesn't sound right. It's 216 apartments, 1 to 3 bedroom apartments, and they're talking about 2.3 average residents per apartment, although we did have someone speak tonight who talked about 6 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. So that's what we're really talking about, okay? And that makes 500 residents, 497 actually. But for some reason, they're talking about 400 because they're trying to downplay the impact on the community here. Further, there were no elevations, drawings, any information provided from the St. Charles Town Company about this development. I have a drawing right here, okay? Because some of our residents went to the church meeting that they had last week to find out this information, okay? But that's the only reason I have this information, okay? And I have copies of this, and I'd be happy to provide it to council so they can see how dense this development is, okay? A couple other things. There's been a lot of talk about traffic and those things, but let's talk about parking. There's going to be 216 1 to 3 bedroom apartments with upwards of maybe 6 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. How many parking spaces are they allowing? Oh, 1 per unit. Well, of course, there must be lots of extra parking available for guests or people who have 2 cars and things like that, like households with 2 working adults might have. No, there's 30 additional parking spaces provided, okay? So let's think about this, okay? 216 units with approximately 500, maybe 600, maybe 700 people living in it with 216 parking spaces and 30 additional spaces for guests and for other cars. That's really going to work great, okay? So that means there's going to be a massive parking problem in the entire neighborhood. I'd also like to talk about the zoning here. Everyone's made a big deal about how this was originally zoned for mixed use in 2013. And I think, I thought I'd give it a lot of thought because I don't really see how this is an appropriate place to be putting a mixed use development. It's not an urban area. Come call, give me a call. My phone number is on the comment sheet here. Give me a call. I'll be happy to show you the area where this is actually going. Or go over and drive and look at what it is, okay? This is a residential neighborhood, R8, okay? There's 1,000 residents living on a much larger parcel of land to the north in North Park East, okay? There's a restaurant, and then there's a failed condo development that never got finished building out to the south. We're the only neighbors that they really needed to talk to. They talked about doing a lot of community outreach, speaking to members of the community. My board meets every month, okay? The only communication we've ever had with the St. Charles Town Company has been through their lawyer. And their lawyer first contacted us to get a quitclaim deed to a disputed parcel of land in between, not talking about, oh, that we've been working for years on putting a affordable housing development in this place, packing in 216 people on 6.5 acres of land.
Mr. Bernick, your time is up, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Scheimer? Sorry? You okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, remind you, if you were here talking about the St. Charles development, again, this is part of the public comment period. This is not part of the official hearing, and it is not on the record. So I strongly request, however you want to put it, that on August the 26th, let's find you in the same seats, because that's when it will go on an official record. And that's when the testimony will really count. I appreciate you taking the time and coming tonight. I appreciate your giving us the testimony you have, but again, this is public comment. This is not part of the real hearing. So August the 26th, we will carry on again. Yes, sir, you have a question?
I got here a couple minutes late and did not get signed in on the sheet, but may I have an opportunity?
Come right on up. And since you didn't sign in, please give us your name.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Dave Truitt. I live in the North Park subdivision. My wife and I moved here 31 years ago. We chose Westminster because it was a residential area, and we liked it then, and we like it even more now. My only concern about this is the number of people. I don't care whether they make $50 a year or $20 million a year, or drive Cadillacs or Volkswagens. I don't really care. There's too many people in too small an area in what used to be a residential area. And I just don't think that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, I've gone through the pages I have of the people who signed up. I think I've covered everyone who signed up that still wanted to talk. But the opportunity is there. If someone still has something they'd like to come forward with tonight, come on down for your 5-minute period.
Welcome, council members and Mayor. Britt Terry from Friends of Stanley Lake, just giving you guys a quick update as we'll try and do all the way along the process of getting to the 2020 boating season. Since the last time we reported, there's been great strides made. We're working together closely with the city. You see a happy Britt today, and I didn't say that. Britt Terry, I'm a member of Erie's subdivision. Anyway, just to give you a quick update, the task force has been going well. Holly came in, the head ranger, presented the city's ANS security program. It was adopted, handed off for execution. So we're now working very closely with city staff. There still are 2 open items on her presentation. If you guys want to see that, it is posted on the website, the city's website. We've got to do cables and locking. We've got that down. We're going to use a lot of elements of all the solutions that we've been presenting for the last 3 months here. So super happy to see how much progress we've made. It's amazing when you look backwards how much of that has been very useful, fruitful efforts from a lot of people, including city staff. There's now a bi-directional communication that's happening. So the task force that's doing tagging, we've still got work to do. We got 2 open items. We'll get those knocked out. The communication, though, is coming from Jason and the city staff is giving people in the community a chance to see what's happening week to week to week. They're publishing it every Monday. I think that's super appreciated by the people who aren't in the bowels of how this is all working. Those of us who know, we feel more comfortable about it. But I get questions every single day, and I think it's good that the city's doing this every single week communication. Even if nothing changes, we're publishing that work continues. So that's awesome. I do want to apologize slightly because Channel 9 did an interview last night. I think it was very positive in the light of the city. It was very positive in the light of Fossil, all of our efforts. And at the very end, they made up their own connection between there being council hearing tonight. I don't think that was intentional. They asked where we meet, when we meet, how often we meet, who we meet with, and then they drew some lines to, hey, there's a city council meeting tonight. So thank God 100 people in yellow shirts didn't show up. We would have helped there. Anyway, everybody's super happy. We're looking forward to 2020. It will be so cool to drive by that lake and see waves, see people out there enjoying it. I think it's going to make the standard quality of life for the city of Westminster go up tremendously, as well as the people who enjoy the recreational resource that's in the city of Westminster. So look forward to that. Thank you guys for listening. Keep it short and sweet.
Tammy wins. I did overlook one person. Tammy, you still here? Okay. Sorry about that.
So my name is Tammy Wines,
Okay.
and I was actually advised not to come up and speak to you guys because I am on the boating task force. As a task force member, I have been told to keep all of my comments at the task force meetings. However, I got to thinking, if the task force subcommittee could come and speak every 2 weeks, then I should be able to also come and speak. We have made great strides with everything that is happening, and things are very positive. But I wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, when all of this started back in April and you had the town hall meeting, there were an awful lot of angry people who got up and said that the city had made a knee-jerk reaction. I wanted to say thank you for making that knee-jerk reaction, because if you had not, we would not be communicating. We would not be talking about issues that are very important to the city, such as clean water. So I am a non-boater. I am the non-boater on the task force. So I ask a lot of questions to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that keeping the city water clean and safe is number one, next to having boats on the lake. So I just wanted to get up and confirm everything that Kevin and Brett have talked about. We are making great strides. I do believe there is still more that we need to work on, but working together with communication is how we're going to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I think I corrected the one mistake I found. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify tonight? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. All right, council, let's see if we can get our part of it done now. Mr. Tripp, if you would, please. I think you're up next.
Thank you. Just to reiterate a thank you for folks coming out this evening, and I have no further report. Thank you.
All right, going to city council. Does any council members have any items that they'd like to discuss? Mr. Demont?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to share about an event that happened this last Saturday. So the 6th was the 100th anniversary of the renaming of Bradburn Boulevard, which was renamed for Donald Bradburn, who fell in World War I defending his country. And so it was a really neat event that they got to honor that historical moment, and it was put on by the Historical Society, as well as kind of headlined or really spear-fronted by Gary Shea, and I think that we owe him a debt of gratitude for a really great event. One of the things that they did there was a record number of flag retirements. The Boy Scouts did 512 flags that they retired in the proper way, which was really neat to get to see how that's done, have it explained, a lot of rich history. I was joined by Councilor Mankey and Haney, and it was a really good event that we were able to honor a past fallen Gold Star hero of Westminster.
Mr. Poles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank everyone who has reached out and communicated with us through testimony in the public hearing 2 weeks ago and emails we received. I hope that you continue that. This is a city made up of thriving, active, friendly communities and neighborhoods. So keep that up, and I hope you feel heard, valued, and respected. I also, 2 weeks ago, we heard from a number of people who commented that staff were very responsive, very quick to respond, and were very professional. So I want to point out that we heard that several times. And as a council member for this city, it makes me feel good. So I commend the staff for their professionalism and being very responsive to the citizens on concerns with St. Mark's Village. So thank you very much.
Ms. Sites?
I also want to say thank you to staff, but for something a little different. This Thursday, my family and a lot of other families in Westminster enjoyed the Westminster 4th of July celebration at City Park. We did have to evacuate the field for a brief bit of time due to weather, but people came back and enjoyed a wonderful fireworks show. We had great music, wonderful food vendors, and it was a great way to feel community and to celebrate what this country stands for. So thank you to everybody who made that event possible. We really couldn't do it without staff's dedication. I also wanted to invite everyone to join us on the 20th for the Westminster Latino Festival. It's going to be at our new train station. I guess it's not that new anymore. New in the last 5 years. We would love to have you there. It is on the 20th. It's going to be a fun all-day event. So come down and say hello.
Ms. Mankey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also like to thank all of you for coming to speak tonight. I appreciate your patience as we work to come up with the best possible decisions for our city. So thank you very much. I also hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July and wanted to thank city staff for a fun and safe 4th of July party and show. They were really diligent about making sure everyone stayed safe and then could get everyone out there as soon as possible. And thanks to everyone who hunkered down in the City Park Rec Center. It was kind of a fun experience. And then also thank you to the Heart of Westminster and the Westminster Historical Society and the Boy Scout troops and all that were involved in the 100th anniversary for Bradburn Boulevard. It was, as Councilor DeMott said, a pretty amazing community get-together. So thank you.
Other comments from council at this point? Seeing none, we have no items on the consent agenda tonight, no items for appointments and resignations. So the next item we will go to is a public hearing. And to be followed by the first reading of Council's Bill number 28. So staff, I'll ask you, actually staff, while you guys get set up, I'm going to give us about a 5-minute break while you're getting ready.
I haven't seen you in forever. Oh my goodness. I wonder why you were so tan.
All right, folks, let's try to get returned to the council. Okay, just for the record, it's approximately 8:35 when we return to the dais. The item before us is to hold a public hearing on the 69th and Lowell Boulevard Comp Plan Amendment. Mr. Caldwell, Ms. McConnell, would you like to start us off?
There it is. Okay, sorry. I'm Patrick Cole with the Planning Division, and this is a public hearing and the first reading of Councilor's Bill number 28 regarding the designation of comprehensive plan use and first reading of Councilor's Bill number 29 regarding the designation of zone district for West 69th Avenue and Lowell Boulevard. This did require public notice, and I'd like to enter into the public record the public notice. A sign was posted on the property on June 25th, 2019. Notice was published in the Westminster Window on June 25th, 2019. Mailed notice was provided to the 4 property owners that are within 300 feet of the site on June 25th. At this time, I will also enter the agenda memo and the attachments into the public record. This is city-owned property, and the city is the applicant. This is the vicinity map. The property consists of 0.75 acres on 5 lots in the North Mountain View subdivision on the east side of Lowell Boulevard, north of 69th Avenue. On the map, the yellow area is the site. Little Dry Creek and the railroad run diagonally near the top of the site. A city dog park is to the west of the site. City parkland is to the north and east of the site. South of Creekside Drive, there is a 4-unit residential building that is in unincorporated Adams County. This is an aerial view of the site. The site is part of the Westminster Station Park, and Creekside Drive provides the southern edge. Lowell runs down the middle of the slide, and Little Dry Creek runs east to west in the slide. The aerial shows the site in an earlier stage of construction. And this slide is of the earth mound that's there if you're driving by on Lowell Boulevard. An active playground is proposed for this site, and the mound of dirt is part of the design. This slide is taken from Lowell Boulevard looking east. And the next slide also shows Lowell at Creekside Drive and is also looking east. And this slide is the parks plan for the site. You can see that there's a trellis, some parking, and some activity areas. And the property this is the comprehensive plan slide. The property was annexed by the city on April 22nd, 2019, and the designation of a comprehensive land use is accomplished with this hearing. And the slide shows the before as having no comprehensive plan designation, and the after shows the property with the designation of public parks, and this is consistent with the surrounding designation. And this slide shows the before as having no zoning. The after shows the property with a zoning of specific plan district. And the use of the site as specific plan district was contemplated with the development of the specific plan district plan for the TOD area, and no changes to that plan are needed with this zoning designation. In summary, the staff is recommending approval of amending the comprehensive plan to designate the site as public parks and to establish the zoning on the site as specific plan district.
Any other comments, Mr. Caldwell? Council, you have any questions of Mr. Caldwell in his presentation? Mr. Volt?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I just want to confirm that this was approved unanimously by our Planning Commission, and there was no opposition voiced at all during the process?
There was no opposition during the public hearing. It was unanimously supported, 6-0.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, I will open up the public hearing to anyone who has any comments that they'd like to provide on the record, either in support of the application or in opposition to the application. All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and move on to the next item. The first item that we will consider is Council's Bill number 28. Ms. Seitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to pass Councilor's Bill number 28 on first reading to approve the comprehensive plan amendment to designate the land use as public parks for the subject properties in the North Mountain subdivision with addresses at 6930, 6940, 6950, and 6960 Lowell Boulevard. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-21 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Ms. Mankey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussions by council on Council's Bill number 28? Ms. Sykes?
I just want to say this is an exciting step forward, and I'm very much looking forward to voting in favor of this.
Other comments by council? Ms. Barajas, this is a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Atchison?
Yes.
Demott?
Yes.
Haney?
Yes.
Mankey?
Yes.
Sights?
Yes.
Scully?
Yes.
Vols?
Yes.
And the motion squeaks by on a 7-0 vote. Ms. Sykes, would you take the second part?
Well, I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 29 on first reading to establish zoning as specific plan district for 5 lots in the North Mountain subdivision with addresses at 6930, 6940, 6950, and 6960 Lowell Boulevard. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment is supported by the criteria set forth in section 11-4-3 and 11-5-2 and 11-5-3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Ms. Mankey.
Thank you. I second.
I have a motion and a second for Council's Bill number 29. Is there any comments or discussions by council? Mankey, do you have a comment? No? Okay. Okay, Ms. Barajas, roll call vote, please.
Demott?
Yes.
Haney?
Yes.
Mankey?
Yes.
Sights?
Yes.
Scully?
Yes.
Vols?
Yes.
Atchison?
Yes. Motion also carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item of business is item B1. Yep, Mr. Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the public interest will be best served by negotiated purchase of goods and services with Agility Communications Group for telecommunication purchases. Authorize the city manager to execute the purchase of $102,000 plus a 10% contingency of $10,200 for a total of $112,200 with Agility Communications Group using the 2017 master agreement.
Ms. Scully.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, if you would, please use the button. And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break your bubble, but you're done for the night. You may all go home. Hey, it's not even 9 o'clock.